Hi everyone, how's it going? Marcio here again. Let's start a new chapter looking at a new blueprint. And we're going to create a new blueprint together that just adds a little bit of extra detail to our ArcViz scenes. So what is that? Well, in this class, we're going to put together the the fire on the cooktop or the hob, okay? So we'll have a look at how we can get the hob onto the island here, how we can interact with the gas and the fire from the character. So let's start with the basics, okay? And I'll explain things as we progress. I'll start, as always, by creating an actor blueprint. There we go. And let's name this one Cooktop Flame. Okay, there we go. So open it up. So now we just need to add our components. So we need to add a static mesh, which will be for the cooker. There we go. And I've already got a model for it over here. There we go. So there's our hob. Some people call it hobs. Sometimes some people call it cookers, don't they? But you know what I mean. So there we go. And now we need to add a mesh for the flame. So we need to add a static mesh. And I've also got the mesh ready. And I'll just call this one Flame 01. Okay, and let's go to our content browser and let's add the mesh, which is here. Okay, so I've placed it in there. I just adjust it so it's in position. Just line it up with the gas burner. We'll start with this one actually in the middle, and you can do all the rest as well later. Just get it in the right position. Just line it up. Again, using these different views are really helpful. Let's get rid of the scene route actually. It'd make it a lot easier, wouldn't it? So now we can see. Okay. And we need to get our we need to line it up first of all. And once we've placed it in its position, then we can start putting the interface in the blueprint and working on the event graph. I think that's okay. What do you think? That seems to be the correct position that the flame would come out from. Okay, cool. So as you can see, this mesh is being animated, isn't it? It's an animated material in the flame, or an animated texture. Now, of course, this in this class isn't our main focus, because that all is something that belongs to a course on materials. Okay, so let's start the blueprint. Let me save it first, and then just put it in its position in the scene. There we go. Let's drag it in. Okay, so we just put it where we want it and place it there, I think. Cool. And let's just adjust it here. I think it needs to go down a bit, doesn't it? Just so it's flush with the worktop. Okay, nice. So there we have our cooker. So let's start having a look at the programming now. Let's save all. Okay, so in our event graph, the first thing we need to do is use the character interaction, don't we? So we need to connect that to our scene under class settings, add it in and search for it there. There we go, good to go. So now let's add the event that's going to kick it all off. Okay, so we need to add the event interact and activate the rest of what we are going to create. Okay, so that's going to take control of it, isn't it? Same as we looked at in the previous blueprints. But let's think about the material, the flame itself, okay? Because we're going to create a material animation blueprint. And it's a different kind of node than we've used before. We saw location nodes and many other kinds of nodes. But now we're going a little bit further, because the goal of this course is always to keep enhancing and advancing our concepts or ideas and understanding. So let's move on and open up the material. So just so we can understand the mesh itself. Okay, so here's the material. It's a little flame, okay, that's already been animated, as you can see. And as you move your position, the flame moves as well, okay? And this is just an instance. Let's get the master. So the master's here. There we go. So here are the several nodes which control the color. And there are a lot of things going on in our material here, but I added this dynamic branch node. And this is really important. Besides creating the opacity for the flame, which is here, it changes it between black and white. So it has the ability to change the opacity map, okay? And it comes into here, it mixes with the color, and it goes over there. I also added this variable, which I named flame on, off, or parameter. It's an alpha channel. So if I have a value of 0, then I can, here I see our texture. If it's set to 1, then you don't see it at all. So what we'll do is via a blueprint, the variation of this material parameter we'll take into consideration and use, okay? So when I want it to appear, it's going to be 0. When I want it to be off, it will change to 1. So this is what we're going to do. Just so you understand what we're doing, it's good to have a good understanding of the master material. Since the material is made into an instance, we can adjust also the color as well here, and we can adjust different settings here because we made it an instance. Okay, so to do this, what do we need to do? Well, first thing we need to do is to create a variable to be able to have more control, okay? And this variable will help us with altering the flame being on and off. So let's have a look here. So it's at the moment, it's open, it's on. So we'll create a variable where it's on and one where it's off. Let's do it through our event graph. Let's create a new variable and we'll name it, what should we name it? Flame on. Let's name it flame on. Okay, and we need to make it an integer because we're going to be working with two values, whole numbers, 0 and 1. There's no variation between, no decimal points. Okay, so I've got my variable, which will control the alpha channel of the material. Nice. So to control this, or any material variable, or to scale parameters to a different value, well, this is what you need to do. Let's open the master as well. And I can have a node that allows me to enter the material and search this scalar parameter as we have here. And there are many of them here, aren't there? So what conditions do we need? Well, you probably guessed it already. We need the material and mesh to apply to it. And we need to have the name of the scalar parameter here. So when you're creating a parameter and creating a parameter that you want to control, it's really important that you name it the correct way, because then it's easier for you to find it within the blueprint and add it later on. So we need to get the new node, and I'll introduce this set scalar parameter value to you now. And this is the one that it sets the value for the scalar parameter, but also for the material. You see it says the material, and this one is on the cooktop and this one's on the flame. So that's helpful for us. So here we have the new node that we're going to be using. And this is a really good node, really good, really useful for us as well. It can do so many more things, more than just setting up the alpha channel. So let's take a look at this node. The target is the mesh component. We have a static mesh attached from our blueprint. And here we have the parameter name, the name of the parameter that we use in the material, right? So it matches up with this, both in the master material, where you type the name, as well as in the instance material. So it has the same name that you set. So I need this name. I can type it here, or I can come over here and type it in there. You can copy and paste as well if you want. So in this mesh, I can change and control the parameter of flame on or off. And here's the parameter I want to change. So we created a variable to modify this parameter. Plug that in here. And this is a float that we can, this is a float, so we can't use it here. So we need to change it, don't we? So it's a float. Okay. So it now will work as if we plug it in. And it's going to be our control, which is defined over here. And we'll be able to, if you want to, you can adjust it in the editor too if you turn the eye on. But let's move on. So far then, when we press the mouse button, it's going to execute this function here. And we can see the flip-flops later on. We'll look at them later on. But when we click, it should change this parameter. And what's the parameter? At the moment is 0. So the parameter needs to be showing 0 here as well. So it's going to begin our scene with the fire off with 1 as a default. So 1 is the default for it being off. So make sure that's set up. So if the value is already 1, the value needs to be 0 here. Okay, so 0 it appears and 1 it disappears. So let's see it working. If the collisions are okay, if everything's making sense from the start, we should see it. So let's click. There we go. So we can see it working now in our scene. So now we have to make it turn on and off. Okay, follow so far? Perfect. So how do we make it turn on and off? Well, let's create a flip-flop. As we remember, that's our node for on and off, isn't it? Like our switch. So flip-flop. Perfect. And now we can set a value for it being on or off. So A will light the flame and B will put it out. So let's copy this and let's paste it down below. Okay, and we'll plug B in. Well, yes, we need to, we can simply change this parameter here to be the opposite and change the settings. So 0 is going to be on, 1 is off, and just plug it in. So now we can alternate between on, off, on, off, on, off. Let's have a look. There we go. So I want to teach you another technique, okay, that'll be really useful for you. And you can use it in many other examples, which is this. Let's return to our flame being on. And we have a value here of 0. If I add this variable and have a value of 0, 2, but I was supposed to have a value of 1 to put the fire off, what I can do is to create another variable and name it flame off. But I'll show you another way that you can do that too. So I have a variable here, which I can name flame on. Let's rename it flame on off, because it can control both. Okay. And I'll get this variable out from here and I'll use set rather than get. Okay. So you set flame on off and I can connect it here and here. Okay. So what I want to do here is when I click the mouse that the flame goes this way, or the flow goes this way, sorry, I set the variable to 0. And if I set this value to 0, this variable will be set to 0, right? Now, I can even do this. You see how I've done that? Connected the two. Just saves using so many variables in our workflow. And the value of this variable will be 0. And when I turn it off, I want this variable value to be 1, right? So I can plug that in here. So what have I done here? Well, basically, it's the same thing as typing it in the other nodes. So is it more complex? Well, actually, I just wanted to show you another way to work with the same information. Just so you're aware of different methods and you choose which one makes more sense to you. Changing variable values in the middle of the flow, in the flow control, might be the way that you want to work. Okay, It might be more easier for you to understand what's going on. Okay. So that's how you can do it, by adding the variable here and choosing set. Okay. And if that helps you, then go for it. And then you can continue to use this method to switch the values of the variables. So since the goal of this course is not just to make things work, but also to explain them, I just wanted to show you that little bit of extra detail so you can be in control of how you decide to work. So we made our fire work. We can put it on, we can turn it off. Now let's zoom in, light it up. Nice. So it's simply lighting and putting out the fire, isn't it? On and off, or switching it on or off, visible, invisible. And this is what we're doing with our material. But we can give it a little bit more sophistication. Okay, we can give the fire the initial spark. You know, when you turn your gas on, you try and ignite the flame, it makes a ticking sound, doesn't it? And then it lights up. So it's trying to connect with the gas, isn't it? It's trying to light or ignite. So just as we did with the water and the tap when we adjusted the scale, we can also do the same with the flame. We can set a scale for it. So to make our blueprint more realistic, we can apply the same here. So let's do that. Let me show you how we'll do that. Let's move this over here. And what we're going to do is we'll create a timeline. And this timeline we'll use for the fire and the scale of the fire. So let's add a timeline here. And we'll name it flame scale. Okay, and it's going to play from the start. Now I'll create a float and put my key at the beginning. It's a quick animation, just a fraction of a second. And it's just to add that extra effect or extra realism to the scene. Of course, you're familiar with how this timeline works by now. I'm going to set it to 0.15 for this one. And so it goes up to 1 in the scale as well. So we don't want it to start from 0 because it doesn't start from 0. It starts here, doesn't it? It starts at the tip of the it starts at the tip there, not at the beginning. So you just need to work out at what point will it come out or start to appear. Let's have a look. Not 0.5. Let's try a bit bigger, maybe 0.6. Okay. This might be fine, actually. Of course, if you want to increase it, do so. I'm just going to give you the basic principles here. So let's just make sure we set it back to invisible. This flame is going to start at 0.6. It's going to be a split second. My curve was going to go from 0.6 to 1, then back to off, okay? From 0.6 to 0. So we've adjusted our curve there. And let me add the name it scale. And I'll use the same node as we used to create the water tap, set relative scale 3D. And we've got one labeled with the flame. Cool. And then I'm going to multiply it here. So this float is the vector kind, but as we saw in another class, when I multiply a float by a vector, it multiplies in all axes, okay? Using the same value from here. All right. So there we go. And if I want to put the fire out, then I need to reverse the animation. So it's going to come here in this flip-flop, put on the fire. Now I need to connect it to do the reverse of the animation. Let's press play and see how it works. Okay, see that scale? Nice. I think it can be even quicker actually. So let's adjust the length of the animation, maybe 0.05 to maybe 0.08 actually. I know it's a tiny detail, but you know, we've got the ability to adjust things like this to get it just right. There we go. I think that looks good now. Nice. So that's it. So we saw a brand new node in this class, didn't we? Which controls material parameters, a really nice one. We also reviewed this technique for controlling variables in the flow, different ways of working with them, using the set as well. And of course, you feel free to use whatever you want. And this part here is basically what we saw in the class on creating the tap. So we continue to use knowledge that we've gained and use it with enhanced information with the materials. So there we go. I think that's it for our class now, and our blueprint is ready. Let me just comment this and we'll call it flame on and off. Nice. So now we have our cooker blueprint. Let me just do one more thing actually. I've got this blueprint done. I don't want to light just one flame. Well, let's put a few more on and just return the values, make it visible. Okay, oops. So I want to light this other burner as well over here. So what you can do, if you want to do that, then you can just copy it, hold down Alt and drag it across. Put it in the center. And then do the same for the other one. Adjust the scale to 0.6. Oh, I didn't copy it, did I? Yeah, don't forget to hold the Alt key, or you can just duplicate it here, okay, and name it, and then drag it across. Yeah, maybe that's a bug in Unreal, I don't know, but you might just have to duplicate it in the components list and call it the correct name. Nice. And return that to start in the correct value. So there are two flames now that are working, one here, one there. Okay, so what I need to do is basically the same setup as before. I don't need to do anything here, so everything's going to work for flame 1. I just need to bring in flame 2 simply by adding it there and there. Okay. So it knows which flames to turn on. That was easy, wasn't it? Let's test it. There we go. So now they both turn on. But something's wrong here. I need to add this here as well. I've forgotten that. Let's try it again. Okay, so now it's working nice. It wouldn't disappear before. It only went smaller, so. But there we are. That's it for this class. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.